It's Wednesday, November 26, 2014, and this is Arizona Mining Review. I'm your host, Lee Allison, here at the headquarters of the Arizona Geologic Survey in Tucson, and it's our special Thanksgiving show, and actually nothing very special about it, but happy Thanksgiving to all of you who are watching. And when you're getting tired of all of those football intros and special holiday shows, gather the family around the computer and watch an episode of Arizona Mining Review. But we've got some news to share with you. Nyal Niemuth up in our Phoenix office is going to update us on some fairly big developments here in recent days. And Nyal, welcome back and happy Thanksgiving. And start us out with maybe Florence Copper. There's been a lot of news about that in situ project.
Yes, there certainly has. If we go back maybe a little more than a month, we had an administrative law judge rule on the aquifer protection permit that Arizona Department of Environmental Quality had issued. And it was a lengthy decision she issued. This was Administrative Law Judge Diane Milhalski issued a 155-page opinion that basically had some issues with the permit. It said that DEQ was locating the monitoring wells too far away from the area of the proposed in situ leaching. And so she basically tossed that to the Water Quality Appeals Board for review. And so just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we've had them say that yes, DEQ needed to perhaps review the permit, but left the door open that they could amend that with the company to change where those monitoring wells were and take care of some of the other issues that were raised.
So where's it stand now?
It's in DEQ's, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality's, hands. They're reviewing what the appeals board has said, and they're going to see if they can't, if you will, modify the conditions so that it, in terms of the judge's view, satisfies the terms of the law. And that's kind of the stickler, as it often is in the law. There's a term that she cited that said minimize the discharge. Wasn't quite the phrase, but effectively it was that the aquifer protection permit should minimize the pollutant discharge.
Okay, so we're waiting to see how DEQ responds and what Curious Resources, the parent for the owner of the Florence in situ copper project, how they respond to whatever DEQ comes up with.
Yeah, both parties. We haven't heard much from DEQ, but certainly the mining company representatives have said that they think they can meet more stringent monitoring locations, etc. So we'll have to see.
Okay, what I read when the judge's ruling first came out was the company indicating that it wasn't that big a setback and that they could accommodate the changes that were being proposed. So now there's something else going on with Curious Resources with a Canadian company. Can you fill us in on the details, and is that going to have any impact on all of this other permitting set of issues?
A couple of months ago, we had a proposal from a company called Taseco to acquire Curious. I haven't heard much about that, but I believe that merger is moving forward as expected. It's not a hostile takeover. And I think we mentioned back then, I'll just mention again, is it turns out when you do a little investigation of who these two companies are, they're both, if you will, affiliated with Hunter Dickinson. And so it's just, I think, the larger company that's a producer, deeper pockets to deal with the permitting and the technical issues, acquiring the group that was initially formed, Curious, to go forward with the project.
Okay, so what it appears is that this may not be a big change, but it gives the companies perhaps some, as you mentioned, deeper pockets to be able to deal with some of these delays and changes that are coming along.
Yeah, one of the things that it brings is in the past, Taseco operates a porphyry copper deposit that's had some copper leaching and solvent extraction, electrowinning, so they've got longer experienced production staff.
Okay, well, it sounds like we'll have some news to be looking forward to in next month's show as the results of the judge's actions and the appeals board, and see how all this plays out. But some other significant news here, Resolution Copper sent out an announcement here recently that was quite exciting, and I'll let you go ahead and explain what's happening up at the in the Superior mine.
We've achieved, or we should say Resolution Copper has achieved a milestone that we've been waiting for some time. They've announced the completion of the number 10 shaft. More specifically, they've announced its completion to a depth of 6,943 feet. And that's quite significant, not only for the project, but it's also just now the deepest single shaft in the United States.
Wow. And that's the depth at which mining may start, somewhere 7,000 down to about 7,000 feet deep. So they have other mine shafts planned, but it's a fairly significant investment for them to take, particularly since they haven't gotten a land exchange through Congress that they need in order to justify making the huge investment in developing that mine.
To date, I believe they've invested over $1 billion. And you're right, it's all at risk. If there's no land exchange, there may never be a mine.
Right. My understanding was that this shaft alone was somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 million, or is that high?
I think you're in the ballpark. And something that'd be interesting to see if they go forward. They wouldn't want to have an accident like where we had the miners left trapped underground in Chile about a year and a half ago. And so it'd be interesting to see if they now go forward and go ahead and deepen the number 9 before they do any other development work.
Good point. Now, one of the things that everyone's been looking for is whether Congress is going to be able to act on the land exchange. And thus far, it's gotten through the House, I believe, but then not gotten any hearing in the Senate. And it's been bipartisan support in Arizona from from senators and from Representative Ann Kirkpatrick, a Democrat who represents the area. She was just reelected. But now with the Senate going Republican after having been Democrat, I think a lot in the industry are wondering when the new Congress comes together, will they be able to move this bill forward and bring it to the president's desk? So I think there's a lot of anticipation to see if the new Congress is going to be willing and able to act on this land exchange.
It'd certainly be interesting to see what happens. And then, of course, we still have the possibility of a veto, but President Obama typically has not been much of a president to use that pen.
Yeah, on these kinds of issues at least. Okay. Well, so some fairly big news here, but there's some other stuff that's been going on and some longer-term developments out there in a variety of areas, uranium and potash, gold, and maybe you could bring us up to date on some of the things that you've been following.
I guess I'd like to talk about a few things on the uranium section of our mining industry, just because we touched on those recently. I only got a chance to talk about the preliminary economic analysis that Uranium Energy did for the Anderson mine. One of the things we commented on when we were there is that they'd used a price of $60 a pound. And I think it's kind of interesting to see that from the midsummer low of $28 a pound, we've seen a 50% rebound in prices to $44 a pound currently. This has been due to a number of factors. We're seeing nuclear power plants being completed. The Chinese are reported to be aggressively buying and stockpiling uranium. And then we've also had one portion of Japan's nuclear power industry get regional approval for restarting a plant.
Well, and I also understand that the Pine Nut, the Breccia Pipe uranium mine up in northeastern Mojave County is going to extend production into 2015. What's prompting that? Not just price, but did they find some additional resources?
They did. Perhaps about a year ago, we mentioned that they had found some additional resources, and even though they were shutting down their Blanding, Utah mill, they were going to continue to mine out whatever mineralization they were able to find underground at Pine Nut, one of the breccia pipes located in northeastern Mojave County. And that's been quite significant. And they, as you just noted, thought they'd be able to be wrapping that mine up by the end of this year, but it's going to continue into 2015.
Any other industry news that you can update us on?
Yeah, we don't talk much about those mills in Utah. There's one other mill that currently isn't operational, but it does have licenses. And so we're seeing that a company headquartered here in Arizona called Anfield Resources is working at acquiring the Shooter Ring mill, which is it's not close to anything. It's about 50 miles south of Hanksville, Utah, in southeastern Utah. And in addition to acquiring that mill, they've also acquired some of Uranium One's breccia pipes. They're acquiring the Waite in Coconino County and the Finley tank in Mojave County. And these are fairly significant in that although they don't have, I don't think, qualifying NI 43101 type figures, they have a historical resource totaling about 1.4 million pounds. The interesting thing to watch with these pipes and some of the others is to see if the Bureau of Land Management will consider the amount of work that's been done sufficient to declare a discovery. That's key as we have the emergency withdrawal declared by the Secretary of Interior on much of the Colorado Plateau.
Okay, I want to change topics here for a minute and ask you about frac sand. We've been all over the country, people have been watching the development of oil and gas production from shale units, and hydraulic fracturing has been getting a lot of attention. What a lot of people don't realize is the huge demand there is for sand, and a particular size of sand and very round sand to use as a fracturing mechanism and as a proppant to hold the fractures open. And it turns out that Arizona's been supplying some of that frac sand, particularly from a quarry up in the Sanders area in Apache County with Preferred Sands, which is a national company. And my looking at it, it looks like the Arizona mine is their largest reserves in the country, but they've had some financial problems here over the last couple of years, and there's been some very significant developments. Do you want to bring us up to date on what's going on there?
The company we're talking about is Preferred Sands. It's a private group, and so we don't see a whole lot of public reporting of their finances. But this summer, we had one of these large private equity groups, KKR, announce that they had invested $680 million in the company.
And is that going to keep the operations open?
One of the things I like to do is take a look at the MSHA site where they report the hours that are being worked at the various operations. And we'd seen a while back a bit of a slowdown in the number of hours worked at the mine and at the plant. And certainly it seems like those have firmed up and production's continuing.
Okay. Well, the company invested quite a bit here in the last few years in upgrading their capacities and their rail loading facilities and things like that. So it seems like they aren't one of the biggest operators in the country, but they're very substantial. And the Utah quarry was capable of producing something like 2 million tons a year. So this investment, it sounds like, from KKR is a positive sign, investing in that operation.
Yeah, we could just kind of speculate, but maybe that's perhaps what's happened is they were acquiring and upgrading investments, putting investments in the plants and mines, too quickly. And so this will probably give them some operating and ability to deal with that debt, because it was a combination of debt and equity that was acquired by KKR. Yeah, those because just to look at the operation up by Sanders, they put in improved railroad sidings that could accommodate unit trains. It's kind of fun to go on to Google Earth or other imagery and look down and see a unit train of frac sand being loaded up.
And heading off to North Dakota, no doubt.
And probably to the Permian Basin. Who knows where that stuff all goes. But we've also seen them put in a very much improved loadout facility and adding a resin treatment plant.
Well, Niall, I hate to cut it short. I know there's a lot of other things we could cover, but we've got other guests that are about to come on. So thank you once again. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll look forward to talking to you next month and hear some more updates. All right, well, joining us now is Joe Bardswich from Northern Vertex Mining, and Joe was on the show back in May of 2013 and was giving us an update on the Moss property, which is about 7 miles east of Bullhead City, and that had originally been discovered by Captain John Moss back in the Civil War days. And Joe and his team have been looking at developing that gold property, and were giving us an update a year and a half ago where things stood. So I'm delighted to welcome Joe back to the show. And Joe, we're glad to have you back on, and we're looking forward to hear what kind of progress you've made in the last year and few months.
Well, thank you for asking me. We're very proud of what we've accomplished. Starting with our safety record, we just passed the 2-year milestone of no lost time accidents, no MSHA reportable accidents. Thank you. And a lot of that was due to everybody on the team, but they were led by David Kinsey, our safety director. The other high point is we did proceed as planned with phase one. We mined 125,000 US tons. The average grade of that was 1.6 grams with about 16 grams of silver. We crushed that to minus a quarter inch, agglomerated it with 4 pounds per ton of cement, placed it on the pad with conveyors and the grasshoppers, etc., and leached that continually up until October 18th, when we shut it down and began the cyanide kill. The recoveries were, especially for gold, was in excess of 82%. The silver lagged at about 38%. Part of that was due to the fact that we're using carbon columns as opposed to Merrill-Crowe. The carbon columns were lower capital expense, etc. Presently, the plan is to bring the cyanide drinking water standards, put the property on care and maintenance while we finish the feasibility study. The feasibility study is tentatively forecast to be at a rate of about 5,000 tons a day, and would be ready in the second quarter of next year, which would then lead to a financing phase, and then on with phase two. Phase two would be exclusively on the patented ground that comprises the Moss Mine project.
Okay, well, Joe, that sounds like it's very similar to what you were projecting when we talked to you back in 2013. You actually were able to produce more during phase one in total tonnage than you projected, and the feasibility that is kind of like right on track with what you were projecting. So that all sounds pretty encouraging. Have there been any real surprises in phase one?
We were over budget in terms of our construction and in terms of our operating costs. Part of that is due to the learning curve, etc. We're confident that we can cut those costs way down. The other thing we did with a lot of things that would be applicable to phase two was cheaper to do while we were there, and so we sort of over-designed in a lot of areas that will help us out in phase two and keep the costs lower in phase two. The projected recovery for the gold was 75%, so we've exceeded that, and we had a real good operations team there that will carry that on as well.
All right, well that's great news. The price of gold has not been helping you a whole lot, but I think when we talked last year, your feeling was that the economics of the project could tolerate a fairly large drop in gold price, but still move forward. Are you seeing any limitations from the current gold price and your ability to move forward into phase two?
I think the biggest single factor is the psychology. You know, when things are going down, people think they're going to go down forever, and when they're going up, they're going to go up forever. We still have a cushion in there where we can make money, and we also have the option of upping the cutoff grade, etc. But we prefer to see higher prices rather than lower prices, obviously.
Okay, all right. Well, I know, I think you were really hoping to get production going this year, but I can understand with the prices down and some of the other challenges you've run into, pushing it back to second quarter in 2015. Um, uh, how firm do you feel that is? Is that you're pretty comfortable that that's going to be achievable?
Yes, and I'm not getting any younger, and so I'm pushing that we beat that schedule. We assembled a good team, and we want to get them back to work and get going on this. So the sooner the better. And some things you can't rush, but it's the objective of everybody is to do it as quickly and as efficiently and as professionally as possible.
Well, when we talked last time, you had about 45 direct employees there in your operation, plus the other subcontractors and folks that you brought in, and you were anticipating as many as 125 in phase two. Are those still kind of the projections you're looking at?
Probably a little high on the 125 in phase two. Part of cutting the costs is can we double up on some of the duties of people, and so I would say lower than the 125 in the 100 range at 5,000 tons a day.
Right, and you'd made a commitment to hire as many folks locally as you could. So I think that's even with 100, that's still a very significant employment for that part of the state. So I imagine the community's watching what you're doing very closely.
Yes, and this is a good community. Mojave County is a pro mining county, and the people that we had on the cyanide leach process, they were well trained by the metallurgists Cindy Jones and David Kinsey. They responded well, learned quickly, and part of that safety record is attributable to the quality of the people that we have in the area.
Well, Joe, is there anything else that you want to bring up that I didn't touch on, or you think is important for our viewers to hear about?
Well, it again, I keep saying this, that the United States has been the #1 mineral producer for roughly 100 years, and the #1 economic power in the world for 100 years, and it's not a coincidence. Good mineral production leads to wealth and a good economy, and I hope that this country continues on that.
Well, that's great. That's a perfect wrap up for all this. And so we wish you the best of luck. We're looking forward to seeing phase two moving forward, and we hope we'll be able to bring you back and talk about when you're in full production and share your successes. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing progress in the mine.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the invitation to come back.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you and all your team.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, that wraps up our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Our producer director is Mike Conway, behind the camera and at the keyboard, Jordan Matty. So we'll look forward to seeing you next month on Arizona Mining Review.